The HOA president taped a $1,200 lien warning to my front door and told me my house had belonged to her association since Tuesday. The paper snapped in the hot wind while a property manager photographed my mailbox and a contractor marked my hedge with orange paint. "Your home was annexed." "You follow our rules now," she said, smiling as if the recorder's stamp had settled everything. I didn't tear down the notice. I photographed it, recorded the markings, and asked to see the instrument that supposedly moved my property into the HOA without my approval. She handed me a certified copy and tapped the president's signature on the last page. I called the county recorder from my porch, not to ask who owned what, but to verify that I had the complete filing. The clerk walked me through all 14 pages. Page 14 contained the certification required by the original declaration. The secretary's signature line was blank. When I pointed it out, the property manager stopped taking pictures. That was the first crack. The second came when I read the attached exhibit and found 11 older homes, all outside the original subdivision, listed beside mine. Marla Voss called the blank line a clerical issue. Her voice stayed smooth, but she took the amendment back with both hands instead of leaving it with me. I reminded her that it was my certified copy. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she released it and told the contractor to finish marking the hedge. He looked from her to the orange paint already drying on my leaves. I asked for his name, his company, and the work order number. He lowered the can. The property manager whispered something to Marla, and 3 minutes later their vehicles were rolling away from my driveway. The warning remained on my door. So did 6 bright marks along the hedge. My name is Eli Warren. I was 46 then, and I made custom cabinets in a rented shop across town. I had learned that measurements mattered most when someone insisted they did not. Before touching the notice, I photographed its position, the tape, every paint mark, and the tire tracks beside my mailbox. I saved the images twice, wrote down the time, and placed the paper inside a clear document sleeve. That evening, I carried the amendment to my kitchen table. The first 13 pages looked official enough. Dense legal descriptions, a notary seal, Marla's signature, and the recorder's stamp. Page 14 was different. Beneath the words Secretary's certification sat an empty line where a name should have been. I placed my deed beside it and traced each parcel number in the attached exhibit. Mine was there, followed by 11 addresses along the older section of Orchard Bend Road. None appeared on the original Silver Pines subdivision map I had received when I bought the house. Then I noticed the small revision box at the bottom of the exhibit. The amendment claimed it had been approved on April 6th. The exhibit listing our homes had been revised on April 27th, 3 weeks later. Someone had added 12 properties to a document after the date the HOA claimed its members had approved it. The empty signature was no longer the only problem. It was the thread that had exposed the seam. The next morning, I pulled the closing box from the top shelf of my hall closet. 7 years earlier, I had bought the house precisely because it was not part of Silver Pines. The 3.2-acre lot sat along Old Orchard Bend Road, beyond Silver Pines' matching mailboxes and measured hedges. My house had been built in 1958, nearly 4 decades before the first Silver Pines plat was recorded. The deed described my parcel by bearings, distances, and iron monuments. It contained no declaration reference, assessment obligation, or covenant granting an HOA authority over the land. My owner's title policy listed utility access and an old drainage easement, but nothing connected to Silver Pines. The subdivision map stopped at the stone-lined ditch along my eastern boundary. That separation mattered for more than privacy. I had spent 2 years saving for a detached woodworking shop behind the house. The county had already accepted my site plan for review, and a supplier was holding a delivery date for the roof trusses. The shop would let me move my cabinet business out of the rented space across town and work close enough to help my aging father. At 10 that morning, a courier delivered a thick envelope from Silver Pines. The cover letter said the recorded amendment was effective immediately and binding upon all listed parcels. Inside were architectural rules, a payment schedule, and 3 violation forms already bearing my address. One challenged the proposed workshop, another cited my work van, The third ordered me to replace the mixed hedge along the driveway with an approved species. The accounting page explained the $1,200 warning. It included 18 months of assessments at $60 per month, plus a $120 administrative charge. They were billing me for a year and a half of membership under an amendment recorded only days earlier. I sent a short written response disputing the debt and every claimed violation. I asked the HOA to preserve all ballots, notices, meeting minutes, owner consents, drafts, and communications connected to the annexation. Then I drove down Orchard Bend with a copy of the property exhibit. The first listed house belonged to Grace Holloway, a retired school nurse in her 70s who had lived there since 1986. She read the amendment twice through her glasses, then brought me an invoice she had received 6 weeks earlier. Silver Pines had demanded a neighborhood services contribution, even though she had never joined the association. The invoice was dated March 28th, 9 days before the amendment's stated approval date, and a month before our addresses appeared on the revised exhibit. 2 other owners answered their doors that afternoon. Sam Ortega had received a landscaping survey but no ballot. Priya Shah had received nothing at all. Neither had signed a consent form, attended an annexation meeting, or authorized anyone to act for them. With permission, I photographed Grace's invoice and recorded what each owner had received. By sunset, Marla had emailed me a response. She said the 12 properties had always been part of the greater Silver Pines community and that the amendment merely corrected an administrative mapping omission. According to her, the president's notarized signature and the recorder's stamp made separate owner approval unnecessary. She gave me 10 days to pay. I printed the email and placed it behind the lien warning. Then I ordered the original declaration, all recorded amendments, the subdivision plats, and the available board filings from the county archive. The documents arrived electronically the following afternoon. The original declaration was 63 pages long. Most of it concerned assessments, architectural control, and common areas. Near the end, Article 12 addressed expansion. It said land outside the recorded subdivision could be annexed only with written consent from the affected owner and approval by 2/3 of eligible association members. The result then had to be certified by the board secretary. I read the paragraph 3 times. Marla's filing had no owner consents, no attached vote, and no secretary's signature. My deed had not changed. What had changed was the public record attached to it. That was enough to affect financing, permits, or any future sale until someone corrected it properly. I closed the file and called Nora Bell, the title attorney whose name appeared on my original closing papers. I told her about the empty signature line and the exhibit revised 3 weeks late. She asked me to send every page and not communicate with the HOA by phone again. Nora Bell's office occupied the second floor of a converted bank building downtown. She was 42, with dark hair cut at her jaw and a habit of lining documents into exact squares before she read them. 3 days after my call, she placed my deed, the Silver Pines plat, the original declaration, and the 14-page amendment across a conference table. A recorder's stamp tells us this was submitted and indexed, she said. It does not decide whether they had the authority to bind your land. That distinction was the first thing she made me write down. The county recorder preserved documents. A title examiner traced them. If the parties disagreed about their legal effect, a civil court could decide the dispute. Marla had treated the stamp like a judgment because most homeowners would never look beyond it. Nora began with the ground described on paper. The original Silver Pines plat ended at the stone-lined drainage ditch on my eastern boundary. My parcel and the 11 neighboring properties had separate legal descriptions that predated the subdivision. None of our deeds referred to the declaration. None of the prior amendments listed our parcel numbers. Then we turned to Article 12. Its language required 3 distinct steps before outside land could be added: written consent from each affected owner, approval from 2/3 of eligible association members, and a certification of that vote signed by the board secretary. The recorded amendment contained Marla's notarized signature and a statement that the addition had been approved. It contained no owner consents, no vote total, and no secretary's certification. Nora asked a senior title examiner named Hannah Cho to run updated searches on all 12 parcels. Hannah spent 2 days reviewing deeds, plats, prior policies, easements, and recorded covenants. Her preliminary report confirmed that the new amendment was the first document ever to claim that our properties were subject to Silver Pines. She also overlaid the annexation exhibit on the recorded subdivision plat. Every added parcel lay west of the ditch, beyond the established boundary. The map had not omitted us, it had excluded us. The report did not erase the filing, but it removed Marla's argument that the HOA was merely correcting an old omission. Nora sent the association a formal records demand. She requested the meeting notice, membership roster, ballots, proxies, vote tally, signed owner consents, drafts of the property exhibit, and every communication with the title vendor. She also sent a preservation notice instructing the HOA not to destroy paper files, emails, or document histories. 4 days later, the association's management company produced a thin packet. The only relevant minutes came from a February 12 board meeting. The agenda called the matter Service Area Alignment. A 4-to-1 board vote authorized Marla to correct a boundary map, but the minutes did not mention annexing land, collecting assessments from new owners, or holding a membership vote. A board vote was not the 2/3 member approval required by Article 12. The packet contained no ballots, proxies, owner consents, or tally sheet. Instead, the property manager included a letter stating that those materials were unnecessary because the amendment was an administrative correction. Nora responded with one question. If no vote was required, why did the recorded document include a blank box specifically certifying the result of one? That question produced no answer. It did lead us to another document. The February minutes recorded the board's acceptance of Secretary Denise Carver's resignation, effective February 2nd. Yet the amendment claimed the annexation had been approved on April 6 and left a space for the duly elected secretary to certify it. Whoever prepared the filing had used a certification page for an office the HOA had left vacant for more than 2 months. Nora did not call that proof of fraud. She said it proved we needed the drafts, communications, and testimony showing who prepared the document and what they knew. She prepared a cease and desist letter grounded in narrower facts. My deed contained no HOA covenant, the stated annexation requirements had not been documented, and enforcement was clouding my title and threatening my permitted business project. The letter demanded that Silver Pines withdraw every violation, stop contacting my lender, remove my address from its owner database, and record a corrective notice within 10 business days. It also warned the HOA to keep contractors off my land unless they had my written permission. I delivered copies to Grace, Sam, and Priya before Nora sent it by certified mail. For the first time since Marla had appeared on my porch, I felt the dispute had moved out of her control. We were no longer debating what she claimed. We were asking her to produce what the declaration required. On the 9th business day, a certified envelope arrived instead of a correction. Silver Pines had rejected Nora's demand. The last page announced that collection activity would continue and that the association reserved the right to record its assessment claim against my property. Silver Pines did not wait for the deadline to pass quietly. 2 days after rejecting Nora's demand, the association added a $175 late charge to my account and recorded a notice claiming delinquent assessments against my property. A copy went to my mortgage servicer before it reached me. The lender did not threaten foreclosure or pretend to decide the dispute. It asked for my deed, Nora's letter, the recorded amendment, and an explanation of the competing claims. Until the title issue was resolved, its review department placed a hold on the paperwork connected to my workshop financing. The roof truss supplier could not keep my delivery slot without a deposit, so I canceled it and lost $640. Marla used the delay as proof that the HOA was winning. She sent Silver Pines residents a memo describing the 12 older properties as part of the community's historic service area. According to her, we had benefited from landscaped entrances, drainage maintenance, and neighborhood patrols without paying our fair share. She never mentioned that my driveway entered from Orchard Bend, that my drainage ditch ran away from the subdivision, or that no patrol had ever covered my road. The memo changed the way people looked at us. A man I had waved to for years slowed beside my mailbox and asked why I thought I deserved special treatment. An anonymous note appeared beneath Grace Holloway's windshield wiper. It called her a freeloader. I photographed it, sealed it in an envelope, and reminded Grace not to answer anyone in anger. Then the contractors returned. Their truck stopped at my head shortly after 7 on a Thursday morning. One worker unloaded a replacement mailbox while another started cutting branches around the orange marks. I stepped outside with my phone recording and held up Nora's cease and desist letter. The crew leader read the paragraph barring entry without my permission. He called his supervisor, shut down the trimmer, and ordered everyone back into the truck. They had cut 4 mature branches and loosened the concrete around my mailbox post. I photographed the tools, truck number, work order, fresh cuts, and every footprint along the shoulder. A local landscaper later estimated $1,480 to reshape and restore the damaged section. The crew leader also emailed me the first page of his work order. It listed Silver Pines as the client and described my address as newly acquired HOA frontage. That phrase mattered. The HOA's public position was that my home had always belonged inside an existing service area. Its contractor had been told the frontage was newly acquired. Nora located Denise Carver through the contact information on an older annual report. Denise agreed to meet us at a coffee shop outside town. She brought a folder containing the resignation letter she had sent on February 2nd and several board emails she had preserved from her final month in office. She confirmed in writing that she had never signed the April amendment, certified a membership vote, or authorized anyone to use her title. Her emails showed why the board wanted a larger boundary. Silver Pines had approved expensive entrance landscaping and private security upgrades. Adding 12 assessment-paying properties would spread those costs and create a continuous enforcement area along Orchard Bend. Several directors had asked whether the outside owners would have to consent. Marla replied that asking 12 independent owners would invite 12 separate refusals. Nothing in Denise's folder showed a membership vote. One director had suggested putting the annexation on the annual ballot. Marla rejected the delay and instructed property manager Grant Lyle to have the map cleaned up administratively. Denise resigned before the next meeting because, as she told us, the board had begun treating recorded boundaries as design problems. The PDF supplied by the HOA contained another clue. Nora hired a document examiner to inspect its embedded properties and revision layers. The preliminary metadata identified a file created by the association's title vendor on April 27th, the same date printed in the exhibit's revision box. An earlier layer contained only the original Silver Pines boundary. The 12 Orchard Bend parcels appeared in the later version. Denise had been copied on one final email after her resignation. In it, Grant sent Marla the revised exhibit and wrote that adding the outside addresses gave Silver Pines the clean, continuous boundary she requested. Marla answered with 2 words: record it. There was no reference to owner consents, membership ballots, or a secretary's certification. Nora warned me that emails and metadata still had to be authenticated. The HOA would have an opportunity to explain them, and a judge, not the recorder, the lender, or either attorney, would decide the legal effect. But we now had enough to show more than a missing page. We had a sequence: costs the board wanted to spread, owners it expected to refuse, a map revised after the claimed approval date, and enforcement that continued after written notice of the defects. That afternoon, the mortgage servicer extended its hold. My workshop site sat empty behind the house while rain softened the graded soil. I drove to Nora's office, reviewed the complaint she had prepared, and signed my name beneath the request for declaratory relief and an injunction. The next morning, she filed it with the civil court. The complaint did not ask the court to punish Silver Pines for being unpleasant. It asked for specific relief: a declaration that the amendment did not bind our parcels, removal of the assessment notices clouding our titles, an order stopping enforcement, and reimbursement for losses we could document. Grace, Sam, Priya, and one other Orchard Bend owner joined me as plaintiffs. The 7 remaining owners signed declarations stating that they had never consented to annexation, received a ballot, or authorized the HOA to act for them. Nora attached our deeds, the original plat, Article 12, the recorded amendment, and Denise's resignation record to the request for temporary relief. Silver Pines was served on a Monday. By Friday, its new litigation attorney filed a response. The HOA denied that a true annexation had occurred. It called the amendment a correction of a mapping mistake left by the original developer and argued that the 12 properties had accepted community benefits for years. The answer did not identify a recorded document connecting those benefits to mandatory membership. 3 weeks later, we appeared before Judge Evelyn Hart for a limited hearing. Nora did not ask her to decide the entire title dispute on an emergency record. She showed that the HOA was collecting money, issuing violations, contacting lenders, and sending contractors onto land whose owners disputed any covenant obligation. The HOA argued that suspending enforcement would undermine its recorded amendment before discovery began. Judge Hart preserved the existing conditions. She ordered Silver Pines to suspend collection, architectural enforcement, and contractor access against the 12 parcels until the case could be decided. The order did not erase the amendment or award damages. It stopped new pressure, while both sides produced the records needed to test it. The filing still affected ordinary decisions. Grace postponed a home equity application for roof repairs after her lender asked about the claimed HOA debt. Priya had planned to sell, but her agent warned that the amendment would have to be disclosed and addressed during title review. My workshop financing remained on hold. The temporary order protected us from new enforcement. It could not repair the public record. Every delay reminded us why a final correction mattered. Discovery lasted 4 months. Silver Pines turned over board minutes, member rosters, vendor invoices, email archives, and drafts from the management company. Nora searched every production for an annexation notice, membership ballot, proxy, tally sheet, owner consent, or signed secretary certification. None appeared. The HOA's attorney insisted that missing records proved nothing because the board believed no membership vote was necessary. That argument made the depositions more important. Grant Lyle testified first. He admitted that the February 12 board motion authorized a boundary map correction, not the addition of 12 named parcels. He sent the original plat to the title vendor in March. On April 24th, Marla instructed him to add the Orchard Bend addresses. The vendor returned the revised exhibit on April 27th, and Grant attached it to the amendment that already carried an April 6 approval date. When Nora asked what vote the blank certification referred to, Grant looked toward the HOA's attorney before answering. He said he assumed Marla had handled whatever approval was required. He never saw ballots, a tally, or owner consents. He also admitted that the work order describing my frontage as newly acquired came directly from the management company's database update. Marla's deposition came 2 weeks later. She maintained that Article 4 gave the board administrative authority to correct maps, and that Article 12 applied only when the HOA purchased new common land. Nora placed the declaration in front of her and asked her to identify that distinction in the text. Marla could not. Article 12 referred broadly to adding land outside the recorded subdivision. Marla then said no one had warned her that individual owner consent was required. The document production contradicted her. 2 years earlier, Silver Pines had considered absorbing 3 vacant lots near its entrance. Its former general counsel sent the board a written opinion explaining that Article 12 required 2/3 member approval, a secretary's certification, and written consent from every outside owner. The plan was abandoned when one owner refused. Marla had received the opinion and forwarded it to Grant with a note saying the procedure was too cumbersome for minor boundary cleanup. That letter changed the mood inside Silver Pines. Until then, several directors believed Marla had acted on advice from the management company. When deposition excerpts and the former counsel's warnings circulated among the board under the case's confidentiality rules, 2 directors instructed the HOA attorney to explore settlement. Another director resigned as treasurer. Marla refused to withdraw the amendment unless we agreed to join voluntarily and pay reduced assessments. We declined. The case was not about negotiating a cheaper membership. It was about whether Silver Pines could create one without the required consent and vote. Nora used the remaining discovery period to authenticate each link. The title vendor confirmed its revision history. The contractor verified the work order. The county recorder certified the exact instrument submitted. Denise reaffirmed her resignation and the absence of her signature. Hannah Cho finalized the title comparisons for all 12 parcels. The lender documented its hold, and I supplied the canceled delivery charge and hedge repair estimate. At the close of discovery, both sides requested a ruling on the amendment's effect. Judge Hart scheduled the hearing for 11 days later. The night before our final preparation session, Nora arranged the evidence across the same conference table where the case had begun. At the center sat page 14, Marla's signed statement above an empty line where the certification of a non-existent vote should have been. The hearing began on a gray Wednesday morning, almost 8 months after Marla taped the first warning to my door. All 12 Orchard Bend owners came to the courthouse. Some sat behind Nora. Others waited in the hallway because the small courtroom filled before the clerk called our case. Silver Pines went first. Its attorney argued that the recorded amendment deserved a presumption of validity because it bore Marla's notarized signature, a legal description, and the county recorder's stamp. He said the February board resolution authorized a map correction and that the association had long provided services benefiting the surrounding area. Invalidating the filing, he warned, would disrupt planning and expose the HOA to costs it had incurred in reliance on the expanded boundary. It was the strongest version of their position, and Nora did not dismiss it. She agreed that the amendment had been recorded and that Silver Pines maintained entrances and security inside its own subdivision. Then she separated those facts from the question before the court, whether the association had followed the recorded conditions required to place covenants on 12 outside parcels. Hannah Cho walked Judge Hart through the title chain. The original plat stopped at the drainage ditch. Each Orchard Bend deed predated Silver Pines and contained no reference to its declaration. The April amendment was the first recorded instrument claiming otherwise. Hannah's overlay showed that the 12 parcels were not missing pieces inside an existing boundary. They were a separate row of properties beyond it. Nora placed Article 12 on the courtroom screen. Its requirements appeared in a single paragraph: written consent from each outside owner, approval by 2/3 of eligible members, and certification of the vote by the board secretary. Silver Pines had produced none of those items. Denise Carver testified next. She identified her February 2 resignation letter and confirmed that she held no office on April 6. The blank signature line on page 14 was intended for the secretary's certification, but Denise had never signed it, witnessed a membership vote, or authorized anyone to certify one in her name. The title vendor's records custodian authenticated the electronic revision history. The vendor received the original Silver Pines map in March. On April 24th, Grant Lyle supplied 12 new addresses. On April 27th, the vendor returned an exhibit containing those parcels. That was 21 days after the amendment claimed approval. Judge Hart looked toward the HOA's table. What document shows that the members approved the exhibit created on April 27th? The attorney referred back to the February board resolution. The judge asked again, this time for a member vote rather than a board vote. He acknowledged that no ballot record existed because Silver Pines considered the change administrative. Nora then showed the contractor work order, calling my hedge newly acquired HOA frontage, Grant's request for a clean, continuous boundary, and Marla's instruction to record the revised exhibit. Last came the former counsel's warning. It described the same Article 12 procedure 2 years earlier and explained that an outside owner's refusal would prevent that owner's parcel from being added. Marla had received it before calling the process too cumbersome. The HOA called Marla to explain. She said she believed the board's administrative authority allowed it to correct a developer mistake without repeating the annexation process. She denied intending to deceive anyone and insisted the continuous boundary was necessary for fair assessments and consistent maintenance. Silver Pines also introduced invoices for entrance landscaping and patrol services. Its attorney argued that our homes received indirect value from improved appearance and security. Nora did not dispute that nearby work might benefit someone. She asked Grant to mark each service location on the plat. Every landscaped entrance sat inside the original subdivision, and the patrol route ended at its eastern gate, half a mile from Grace's house. None of the invoices named Orchard Bend. More importantly, Article 12 did not say indirect benefit replaced consent. Judge Hart asked whether any plaintiff had paid an HOA assessment before the disputed filing. Grant admitted none had. Grace's March invoice showed that Silver Pines tried to collect early. It did not show acceptance. Nora asked her to identify the original developer document placing our parcels inside Silver Pines. Marla could not. She asked for an owner consent bearing any plaintiff's signature. There was none. She asked for the notice of a membership vote, the ballot, the tally, or minutes recording one. Again, there was nothing. The empty line had led us to the case, but it was not carrying the case alone. Around it stood the deeds, plat, declaration, resignation, missing ballots, missing consents, revision history, work order, internal emails, and prior legal warning. Each piece answered a different part of the same question. Judge Hart took the matter under advisement. 23 days later, Nora called and asked me to come to her office. The written order was waiting on the conference table. The court ruled that recording the amendment did not substitute for compliance with Article 12. The board resolution did not establish the required membership approval, and the evidence showed no written consent from any outside owner. Because the revised property exhibit was created after the claimed approval date, the HOA could not show that even its board had approved the final list. The amendment was declared ineffective against all 12 Orchard Bend parcels. Silver Pines was permanently barred from collecting assessments, imposing architectural restrictions, or sending contractors onto our properties under that filing. It had to release every assessment notice, correct its owner database, notify the affected lenders, and record a certified copy of the judgment so future title searches would show the amendment's limited effect. The ruling resolved the property question. The remaining claims involved documented expenses, not a dramatic jackpot. Judge Hart directed the parties to address them in a settlement conference. With two directors now urging an end to the case, Silver Pines agreed to pay $21,600 toward shared legal, title, and document examination costs, $1,480 for my hedge, $640 for the canceled trust delivery, $785 in lender and recording charges, and $2,400 for comparable title review expenses incurred by the other plaintiffs. The total was $26,905. We accepted because every dollar corresponded to a record, invoice, or receipt, and the permanent order mattered more than extracting punishment. Silver Pines admitted no intentional wrongdoing, but it could never use that amendment against us again. 10 months after the notice appeared on my door, I carried a certified copy of the judgment toward the same recorder's office Marla had treated as the source of her authority. This time, the document did not pretend a stamp could create consent. It recorded what the evidence and the court had finally established. The recorder accepted the certified judgment that afternoon and indexed it directly against the defective amendment. The original filing remained visible in the public record, but anyone searching one of our parcels would now see the court's ruling beside it. Silver Pines had tried to use recordation as the beginning of its authority. The corrective entry became the end of it. Within 2 weeks, the HOA released every assessment notice and sent written confirmation to our lenders. My mortgage servicer closed its review, and the workshop financing moved again. Grace restarted her roof application. Priya placed her house on the market with a clean title explanation prepared by Nora. Each Orchard Bend owner received a certified copy of the judgment and the recorded correction. The $26,905 settlement arrived according to schedule. Nora's office distributed the shared reimbursements, and I paid the landscaper to restore the hedge. He removed the damaged limbs, stabilized the loosened mailbox post, and planted 3 new shrubs to fill the gaps. By early fall, fresh leaves covered the last traces of orange paint. Change came more slowly inside Silver Pines. The board hired an independent professional to review its records and notified members that the 12 outside parcels had never become part of the association. At the next scheduled election, Marla lost the presidency. She remained a homeowner, but she no longer controlled the agenda or the association's filings. Grant Lyle's management company completed its existing term, and the board declined to renew its contract. Not every Silver Pines resident apologized. A few continued to believe we should contribute because we lived nearby. But several people who had repeated Marla's claims came to Orchard Bend after reading the court summary. The man who had accused me of wanting special treatment helped carry 2 replacement shrubs. Grace received a handwritten apology from a family whose children she had once treated at school. My workshop went up before winter. The trusses finally arrived on a clear Monday morning, and I watched them settle into place above the slab that had sat empty through months of litigation. I moved my tools out of the rented shop before Christmas. The shorter commute gave me more evenings with my father, which was worth more than anything listed in the settlement. The first job I completed there was a set of walnut shelves for his den. He sat near the open doors while I fitted the joints, close enough that we could talk without raising our voices over the saw. That was the ordinary life the title dispute had delayed. I framed a copy of page 14 and hung it beside the filing cabinet in my new office. I did not keep it as a trophy. The empty secretary's line had not won the case by itself. It had simply told me where to look. What unraveled the annexation was everything connected to that blank space. The vote that never occurred, the consents nobody signed, the map revised afterward, and the records showing the board knew the difference. On the first warm afternoon of spring, I closed the workshop doors and walked down the driveway. The repaired hedge moved softly beside the mailbox, green enough that I could no longer find the cuts without searching. Silver Pines still began at the stone-lined ditch. My home still stood outside it. Nothing about the land had changed. Only the record had finally caught up.